Hi, I'm Diane Wespiser. I live here in Lee, and this quilt show represents three generations of my family. There are some from my grandmother who lived from 1901 to 1986, some of my own, and some of two of my grandchildren. When I was a child, I loved going to my grandmother's sewing room. Unfortunately, she passed away before I started quilting, hence the need to teach my grandchildren how to quilt. So my grandmother had 6 children and 18 grandchildren, and each of us was given a scrappy quilt when we made it to a big bed. This is my quilt from Dee. I have resided in 3 homes in Westfield, 1 home in Chicopee, college in New York, 3 homes in Worcester, 2 homes in Lee, and I've always had this quilt in my bedroom. I've repaired the quilt, labeled it, and cannot imagine living anywhere without it. I'm now the age my grandmother was when the quilt was made for me, and have made sure my grandchildren have quilts made especially for them from me. This is another quilt made by Dee. I'm unsure of the provenance of the quilt, who she made it for or why, but I found it in my mother's cedar chest a few years ago and claimed it for my home. Dee loved collecting various fabrics and sewing them together in a semi-random order. This quilt was designed by my granddaughter, Georgia. It's based on a drawing she did in first grade at the age of 6. Together, Georgia and I enlarged the drawing using a projector and made a pattern from the drawing. Georgia selected the fabrics, fused the pieces onto the quilt, and machine appliqued the fabrics to the background. I machine quilted and put the binding on this quilt. Titled GEM, this was displayed at QuiltCon 2024 in the youth group. This second quilt, the purple and gold and yellow, is a modern sample that Georgia completed in the year 2023. The inspiration for it was from a quilter from Australia named Brenda Gale Smith. Georgia selected the particular patterns and colors and experimented with improv and composition with this work. This quilt hung recently at QuiltCon 2025 in the youth group. Georgia's currently working on her submission for next year's QuiltCon. The next quilt, Favorite Sports, is by Georgia Wespiser's brother, Thomas. They are my 2 oldest grandchildren. In the year 2024, Thomas declared he wanted to learn how to quilt, and he chose all these novelty fabrics to reflect his love of sports. Currently, he plays baseball, soccer, fishes with his grandfather Bob, skis with his family, and is a student of karate. Thomas was 6 years old when he mastered the use of his sewing machine and picking out his favorite fabrics for this quilt. The rest of the quilts in this generational quilt show have been made by me mostly over the last 20 years. I have been able to pursue different workshops and different styles of quilting, so you'll see my quilts are as varied as what I learn along the way. So this first quilt is of my grandparents in the garden. My earliest, clearest memories of my paternal grandparents are visiting them when I was young and spending time in their lush gardens. Flowers, fruits, and vegetables seemed to be everywhere. Pasquale and Angela Membrino immigrated from southern Italy to the U.S. in the early 1900s and brought their horticultural skills with them. Inspiration for this quilt was made from a photo taken during the 1960s. My parents were urged by my dad's much older siblings to give my dad an American name, George. Hence the picture of George Washington being held by my grandfather in this quilt. These next 2 quilts of musicians were done from photos, much like the one of my grandparents. The one on top is a photo of my daughter, who actually has her doctorate in flute performance. She inherited, I think, most of her musical talent from my dad, who is in the quilt below. That's a picture actually, or inspiration from a picture taken in the 1930s of my dad playing trumpet, and I made this for him when he turned 80. He loved performing music and earned a college degree in music education. And even though his career as a music teacher was relatively short, less than 10 years, he cherished music throughout his life, and one of his favorite places was the lawn at Tanglewood. This quilt, the Map of Lee, was made using a technique I learned from Tim Natar of South Hadley. My grandmother lived here from 1919 until her death, and I've been here almost 40 years. The quilt itself is based on a map of Lee from 1910. If you look close enough, you can find Main Street. Greylock Street is the vertical line on the right side of the quilt. So look for your home if you're from Lee. For the past decade, I've been more drawn to modern quilts than pictorial ones. Family ties, close, extended, ever-changing, held together by time, place, and love is the title of this quilt. It was designed starting with a traditional block. The block was enlarged to 24 degrees, and various elements of the block were subtracted to create a loose network of interlocking ties. This quilt was part of QuiltCon 2021. This quilt is titled Advice During Quarantine, Love, Hope, Endure, Be Kind. What can be said to loved ones during an unprecedented time? Advice from my children and grandchildren sometimes is best said indirectly. Using QR codes, quick response codes, my message is available for all. Websites are available to create your own QR codes with your own messages. These codes lend themselves to quilt patterns. This quilt was part of QuiltCon 2021 online due to the pandemic. This quilt is titled Fun with Fungi. My husband Bob and I love foraging for mushrooms from May through October. This quilt was designed based on the traditional New York beauty block. The quilt block was enlarged, reversed to create the iconic mushroom cap. Distinctive embroidery details were added to each cap to highlight the biodiversity of the mushroom kingdom. The quilt was displayed at QuiltCon 2022. The next two quilts are called pixelated quilts. They're based on photographs that get pixelated, and you play with the color. I just think they're fun. So the first one is called Hanging Out with Georgia. Georgia being the same grandchild who made the other two quilts, the Big Bunny and the Sampler. She's my oldest grandchild, and she as a child loved hanging upside down from monkey bars. There are 7 different colored fabrics and a total of 1,680 pieces of fabric in this quilt. The red color palette was chosen to further the abstract nature of this particular quilt. You need to stand 10 feet away to be able to see Georgia's smile. This next pixelated quilt is based on a photo of Thomas, who made the earlier quilt. Thomas's strong focus and determination comes through. There are over 1,130 pieces and 12 different colored fabrics in this quilt. You need to stand back to get the full effect of Thomas's expression and determination. In the first display case is a patchwork dog made in the 1960s and a few of the many Christmas trees my grandmother made in the 1970s. When my grandmother Dee found a pattern she liked, everyone in the family was gifted with a special item. Many of these Christmas trees are still displayed during Christmas every year in my extended family. The red and green velvet is mine and my favorite. In the second display case is a patchwork tablecloth. My grandmother would make them all different sizes, just give her the order. Next is a patriotic apron that I assume my grandmother made for the 1976 bicentennial. And lastly, she learned how to make appliance covers. And this one would have covered a very big toaster. Hi, I'm Diane Wespiser, and I do want to thank you very much for allowing me to share my grandmother's quilts, my grandchildren's quilts, and my quilts with you. If you are visiting the library, there is a comment book, so you are welcome to make any comments, or if you have questions, I do check the book periodically. Leave the question with your email address, and I'll get back to you with the answer. Thank you again. Hi, I'm Diane Wespiser, and I do want to thank you very much for allowing me to share my grandmother's quilts, my grandchildren's quilts, and my quilts with you. If you are visiting the library, there is a comment book, so you are welcome to make any comments, or if you have questions, I do check the book periodically. Leave the question with your email address, and I'll get back to you with the answer. Thank you again.